Juju. Say hi to Juju. Say hi to Juju.
So what light did you leave on?
In the truck?
Yeah, a light or charging thing?
I was just had the key in the ignition.
That was enough to drain the battery?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about it. Yeah. All right.
It shouldn't have been.
Yeah, maybe it's a little low. Check. That's recording. That's recording. And then this is now recording as well. And we sound pretty good, so all right. Let's see here. Oh, well, thanks for having me over, Willie. That was fun. That was wild. And you really go way back. I'll give you a pound. You really go way back to maybe a solid decade ago in haiku.
Yeah, minimal.
Right?
It's probably like... Yeah.
Right? It was like, oh, geez. Back in haiku in 2000 and... I'm going to say 10, 11-ish, something like that. I moved up from Gihei. And then it's 2023, so it's solid 10, maybe a little bit more than 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little intro here, okay? So, aloha and welcome to the Solar Coaster here in deepest fringe of the empire, Hana Kipuhulu zone, off-grid. Really, this is the place that I think of as kind of like the furthest reaches of America. You know, if you want to say it's America. Right? And I'm up here with Willie and finished up a bunch of work, Vegas, and needed to decompress. So Willie was kind enough to offer me to come here and get a sense of the what's going on with this awesome place that he's living in. And I've been hearing about this for a couple of years. Willie, why don't you introduce yourself, man? Tell us about who you are.
Oh, well, I'm Willie, and Josh has been a dear friend for quite a while, and has helped me out with a lot of solar solutions and ideas. And in a way, I kind of introduced Josh to solar in the first place, I think, because of the house we were at together. It was,
no doubt.
had a grid tie system, and you learned about that a little bit, and we stayed friends over the years, and we always talk about solar, and we talk about living off grid and being efficient and all that kind of stuff. So it's it can actually make the most of nothing. I started with nothing up here except a great amount of rain and a good blend of sun to gain energy. So I've been, I started off with, I don't know, lead acid batteries and like calling a few guys and remembering what I learned. I went to this boot camp in Hopland, California.
I remember you told me about that.
Yeah. So a boot camp for beginners on how to set up an off-grid system and all that. So I kind of knew a little bit and did some research on like what to, how to get it going. Come on up. Come on, Banyan. Come on.
He's like, how do I get over that? Yeah,
there you go. You got it. And, set up my solar, set up a much better water catchment system up here. using a composting toilet. I have, I put in water pumps and hot water, on demand Palomas, and been pretty happy with everything so far, up here. And, it's worked out well for a couple of years. So pretty happy about that. And
what I find interesting about where you're at right now is, if you think about solar and storage, it started in a sense back in I think like the 70s. You had this kind of revolution, and it actually was interesting. Northern California, there was a lot of development in solar, and that was kind of the off-grid revolution, right? And then of course Maui and Hana and Kipahulu, this area didn't have for many years grid
Right.
access, and so
still don't.
Still, yeah, right. Still don't. And so it was a kind of an area of solar plus battery off grid, purest form. A lot of it was happening out here for decades, and then I didn't get involved with the picture until like 2010s. And for me, I was traveling around the world with Peace Boat, and I was like, I want to find a place to raise my family that I feel is consistent with these ideas that we figured out, or got a taste of around the world. And Maui was inside of the U.S., arguably. Some people would argue against that,
Right.
which is a reasonable discussion for sure. And I thought, oh, this is a good place to plant down roots while we raise our daughter Julia. And one of the things that I wanted was really to get back to closer to nature. For her, I was thinking about this term. I was doing a lot of reading and a lot of theoretical stuff. And this term was nature deficit disorder. Nature deficit disorder. Real New York Timesy stuff, right?
Okay.
And the bottom line is that they're saying that people were out of touch with the rhythms of nature in a very real sense, and that creates problems for us as humans, right? And I wanted to figure out how to not replicate that problem with my daughter, but I really wanted to live close to the land up country where the daughter was in school. And then I was looking online, it's Craigslist, and I saw this house, and I was like, you got to be kidding me! It had this grand deck out back. It was right in the jungle, like right on the edge of kind of the dry, but near the wet. So this beautiful location. Icone Place was the road.
Yeah.
And I called up and I met you. Well, I don't remember meeting you the first time, but I remember the house, and you were like, what on earth is this thing? And there was a huge garden out back, and you had a pond, and you had a huge banana grove, which I would find out later was on Greywater.
Yeah.
And you had solar,
Yeah.
one of the first net energy metering systems, which is kind of the next stage of the evolution of renewables, right? And I remember, do you remember walking in? Actually, I do remember when I met you, but I was thinking more about when you were walking me through the systems. And you said, Josh, this is a solar system, and you explained it to me. And then you said, these are LED lights. And you said, and you had county water though, you didn't have catchment, right?
County water. Yeah.
So you were like,
Water was an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually is what ended that whole project. Was I would have had to have dug a well 400 feet deep through solid rock.
Right, wells out here.
And it was out of my budget. I'm
Yeah.
like, and water catchment I could have done, but it was a large investment as
Yeah.
well, with filtration
Yeah.
and the right roofing material,
Yeah.
and a whole new
Tens
roof.
of thousands. Yeah.
Solar
sure.
was already installed,
Right.
and it may or may not have been enough for my family,
Right.
because it wasn't just me there. It was
Yeah.
like a bunch of people were
Yeah.
living there. So
No doubt. Yeah, very really interesting to look back on that and then think about how excited, from a personal perspective, how excited I was to bring Julia at 4 or 5 years old into that environment.
Yeah.
And I remember you even had like a tiller around and lots of little things, and got a dog. Remember Lucky, right?
Yeah.
And I went out tilling the garden. I would spend all this time in the dirt, and then I would learn about solar. And then around that time, I started my company, Maui Solar Project, right? And I just went whole hog into renewables because I thought we as a family are gaining so much from this experience. Julia was out there and she could identify the different. So I don't think of it as just energy. Energy is like an enabling piece of a bigger puzzle of sustainability,
Mhm.
and not sustainability in a buzzwordy way. Like, just it's so empowering to be close to the land
Mhm.
and see how that impacts your life, right?
Sure. Growing your own food,
Yeah.
being conscious of water use and
Yeah.
power use, and the mix of all of it. Yeah.
All of it. So it was a real privilege, and it was a real fun place to live over the years, and then get acquainted with the renewable energy world, and then start to build the business. Right. Ultimately, we moved out, and I moved to another house in Haiku for a couple of years, and then ultimately was able to somehow figure out how to buy my own house, and that house I'm doing a lot of, I have catchment, and now we're really into this movement of very high tech renewables. Want some agua?
Yeah.
There you go. And just continuing that discussion. You want to grab
Yeah.
food? In that world right now, it's like things like the electrification of transportation. We had a great dialogue about that the other night. Some differing opinions on that, and but like solar plus battery on grid post NEM, meaning we don't have NEM. You were like NEM 7, right, in Maui, or NEM 10 or something. One of the first net energy metering systems back in the very beginnings of that, and then now I'm in this world where I'm a self-supply system, so I'm not backfeeding energy into the grid. I'm not quite the off-grid world because I'm connected to the grid, but I am living with energy in a way where I'm really trying to produce, store, and consume in order to mitigate what I buy from the grid. So that's kind of the next iteration of this game, right? So in a sense, you have the off-grid world that we're circling back to at this place right now.
Yeah.
And then the net energy metering world, which is what you were a pioneer of.
Yeah. And in doing that, it was always kind of my thought that eventually I want to make it completely off grid, because power goes down.
Yeah.
Those older systems, when the grid went down, you had no power unless you had storage.
You were Enphase, right?
Pardon me?
You were early Enphase. Were you microinverters?
I don't know
Or
about that. I
it
just
SMA?
know that. I just know that
It might have been SMA.
it would shut off.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't use my own panels to power the house. I'm like, all right,
Totally.
eventually I got to get batteries. But back then, getting a battery bank for what I would have needed if the power went off, it was complicated because you needed like a special switching
ATS, automatic
and that was
transfer
still
switch.
kind of illegal to use them.
Yeah.
You couldn't set yourself up that way, so you either had to commit fully to a grid tie or fully off grid.
You bring up an interesting point. The notion of what is permissible and not,
Yeah.
and who really has authority to say this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the utility, they're concerned about their business model for sure.
Well, the main concern, and I understand, is that the systems then weren't set up to protect, like, so line goes down, I'm just sending power into the line.
Yeah.
It's got to shut off because guys are up there
Yep.
trying to work.
Yeah,
it's a
totally
safety
legitimate.
thing.
Yeah, totally legitimate. So they were, trying to navigate that rollout of NEM, which was enormously successful over the subsequent decade, and which is the reason why I was able to run a business out here. And, you couldn't really have you couldn't really do both of those things like you just said. There was off grid, and then there was grid tied, and they were like worlds that just didn't meet.
Right.
And now the world that we're living in, the world that I'm living in, over in Rockwell, there's an interaction of those things. So storage,
right,
solar, and now even EV charging, the huge battery banks and the EVs that are becoming available. That world is now matured to a place where we can do that. We can have that interaction. But we come full circle to this off-grid purist and minimalist in many ways too, because you're not consuming loads of energy. You're saying, what do I need first? And then it turns out that you don't need a lot.
right.
You're able to do it. There's such abundance out here in Hana and Kipahulu areas. We're staring at Big Island, which is one of the largest islands in the world, by the way. I was looking at the rank ordered size of islands. Big Island's one of the largest islands in the world, like top 5, I think.
Really?
Yeah, it's like Greenland, Great Britain, I think New Zealand, or there's a couple of islands, and Big Island's one of it. So we're staring at this beautiful view of Big Island. We can see Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, right?
And Kilauea.
And Kilauea.
Yeah.
So we're out here, and
Yeah,
this,
there's Kilauea.
there's Kilauea. That's
Mauna
where,
Loa is right there, and Mauna Kea.
yeah, Mauna Kilauea. Mauna Loa is a smaller one, and Mauna Kea is the big one, right?
Mauna
Loa is the-
Kea, yeah, Mauna Kea is almost 14,000 feet.
That's the farthest left, right?
Yeah, farthest left. Then you got Mauna Loa, and Kilauea is lower than that. That's where there's activity.
Wild, wild. So you're out here, and you got unlimited amounts of food in terms of coconuts, and it's a thing that everyone's imagined at one point in life. And I saw starfruit and pomelo and tangerines and
Avocados,
avos,
lilikoi,
banana
all over
like
the
crazy,
place.
lilikoi.
Yeah.
So, and what's funny is that when you get you think to yourself before you have the experience of being around that abundance, wouldn't it be cool to be around to have your own fruit trees? I don't think anyone doesn't like that idea. But it's kind of funny. We were just talking about bananas. There's a banana hanging here. I'll take a shot of it if it's not in the shot. Bananas grow like crazy, right? And bananas are a great source of food. But when we buy food in the grocery store, I think about this phrase a lot. Everything becomes commodified, right? So we go. I'm gonna buy a banana and it's $1 or whatever it is. I'm gonna buy an avo and it's $3. Or I'm gonna buy a dragon fruit, which I'm like drowning in right now. A dragon fruit and it's like $10 a pound, right? And all that becomes commodified, and you think of it in those terms. But then when you live in an environment like this, or an environment that I live in kind of a little bit as well, you start to see that a nature provides in such an abundant fashion that it becomes decommodified.
Yeah.
And you go, that's got nothing to do with money. That thing right there. And I'm not a communist, but I'm a capitalist. But I mean, you go, that's got nothing to do with money. And then you have so much of it, you can only freeze, consume in smoothie so much. So it necessitates interaction with people, because you have to say, hey, can I give you $100 worth of dragon fruit? Bucket of dragon fruit. Would you please take it?
Luckily, in this era, Josh, we do a lot of trade.
Yeah.
Like I trade, like helping someone on their solar system, and I get like 10 pounds of, meat.
Right.
Or dog sitting for fruit, or I got coffee. Oh, okay, cool. We just
It's
a
amazing.
lot of trade happens.
And that has to happen in an environment where there's that kind of abundance, because there's so much of it. You want to share it, or if they happen to have something that you don't have, there's obvious opportunity for trade, which is so cool. The bartering economy is so great. So it's all part of the same. For me, it's all part of the same kind of road of discovery, And I've been wanting to come out here for a while, but the bananas are a great example, because it's like, hey, would you like to take some bananas? Like, whoa, no bananas. I got too many bananas already.
Take that, right? I have another one ready to go. So,
but the thing that enables us to be out here, because if you didn't have the technology that we have access to now, not just the renewables, that's a key piece of it. The energy is kind of a foundational level of it. But we also have, like, you living out here, you've got an amazing television, you've got access to all the different apps and things you need to. You live like the way everybody lives, right?
yeah,
You got everything you need.
pretty much. And no pipes, no wires,
No connection.
no, just Wi-Fi signal
Right.
from Big Island.
Right.
I get cell signal from Big Island.
Right. The cell towers.
Yeah,
They actually shoot over here and you're able to get it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be fun to just sit down and chat about kind of like how because to me this is the purest form of where solar plus battery has gone, right? And it's not just that. Of course, it's the energy piece, but you have to think about water, you have to think about food, you have to think about waste, right? What do you do? So you've got a catchment system. You've got pumps to run the water, which we were just talking about, that you're actually working in DC right now at the moment, which I find. So you have this term, you're actually hybridized here. You have DC and AC systems.
Mm-hmm.
You have a composting toilet. I find composting toilet fascinating. I really do. Because that's a really kind of, I'll use the term elegant, talking about shit. It's an elegant way to handle that. That's because other systems are very, there's a lot going on in other systems, right?
And it's so much more natural.
Yeah.
And you can do great things with that compost, but but
It's a resource, actually.
it just happens if you set it up right. It's simple
It is, yeah.
and zero water.
Yeah, and that's huge because water is
Huge.
water is something that there are moments where it's water's feast or famine because you have this is actually a very wet region of the world, but there are times when it dries.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you want to be very conservative about your water use because otherwise you could be trucking water in, and water is heavy. Water is 8.34 pounds per gallon, by the way, folks.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you try to truck in 100 gallons, that's 900 pounds in the back of your truck.
Yeah.
And you're not talking about rolling down, a highway. You're talking about, mountainy roads and stuff that's not easy to do. So water conservation is a component of this conversation. How you manage waste. And we'll circle back to the foundation of it all, of course. Food's a component of the conversation, but it's this energy, which is kind of the fun part, which is how it all started,
Yeah.
So we actually, I think didn't I sell you a couple of these solar panels?
All of them.
Yeah. So you were like, hey man, I'm going out to keep and I was like, oh great, I got some extra solar panels, and then I come out here and they're up and they're banging and they're producing shit tons of energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had a road of kind of like discovery in order to get this place dialed into the way it is. What kind of systems do you have in place at the moment? I mean, I've seen it, but
Well, I have. I use the Outback charge controller, and I have 3 sets of panels, and each of the 3 are in series, and then they're all paralleled at a junction box. So it keeps the voltage at a certain level, or wattage at a certain level. So, and the charge controller it's a really good one. So it kind of manages it all really well.
I got a picture of these Outback.
Yeah, it's the Outback.
And those are the bulletproof.
Yeah, and I got
off-grid world.
And at the time I couldn't afford the Outback, the matching inverter.
The big Radian.
Yeah,
those
I
are like
wanted
6 or
to
7
get.
Gs.
I know.
Those are
I wanted to get one, but I couldn't afford it. So I bought the cheapo one on Amazon, 2,000 watt. I did some math and figured that's all. I'm not going to need more than 2,000 watts.
Right.
And so I got I think you have a photo of it, but I got this, and the thing's been working rock solid for 2 years, and it was like $300.
300.
And then
Crazy.
and I just plug everything into that. I have, originally I had set it up where I had so it's a 24 volt inverter, and then I set it up so that I could run the water pumps, which were Marine 12 volt, which I highly recommend because they put plenty of PSI. You get plenty of pressure. And I had it, what do you call it when it goes from, it's not an inverter, it's a...
Oh, the transformer. To go from 24 to 12.
A transformer from 24 to 12.
Yeah.
I put up I put everything on breakers and extra breakers and, just to be safe.
Yeah.
But because of budget at the time, I couldn't get lithium ion, so I went with, the Marine deep cycle Walmart $100 batteries, and I had 6 of them, and I had them set up in parallel and series, so it was producing 24 volts to the inverter.
They're each 12 volts.
But the batteries started dropping like flies. Like, all of a sudden it would drop. I have a backup generator. I was, if I wanted to watch TV at night, I had to turn the generator on, and I'm like, something's not working right here.
Yeah.
And then I found out about a good source of lithium-ion batteries are actually, to me, I like the fact that they're actually used because I'm not contributing to excess lithium mining, whatever worldwide, but so it feels better in that respect.
Yeah.
So I got a source of good lithium ions, and now I hooked up 4, so they're in the series and parallel to run the same 24 volt inverter.
So each of those lithium iron phosphate battery banks are 12 volts.
Yeah, they're 12. There's four 12 volts.
So you got them going 24, 24.
I got so I got in series and parallel.
Yeah.
And since then, I haven't had to ever use the generator, which, I was spending a lot of money on gas.
Yeah.
I wasn't using my fridge. It wasn't staying on all night, so I was buying a lot of ice for coolers, for keep food and meat and stuff for this guy. And so the switch from the lead acid to the lithium ion was like a game changer.
I think
Game changer, because it kept everything going all night. I never needed to turn the gen on.
It's wild. It's wild because, I remember back in the day, you'd walk into houses in Kipahulu or Hana 20 years ago. They had been built 10 years ago. I saw them. And they would literally have a room the size of a car for batteries.
Yeah, big 6 volts.
Yeah. And they were just trying to...
the big...
Yeah, monsters.
Yeah, the ones you can't even lift yourself.
And they were just trying to, meet... I would say they had to really dial down their expectations for what they could do in their home.
Right.
Because of the limitations in storage. And then, of course, they would have an integrated generator, some big honkin' Jenny, and that thing would run on a regular basis. Right?
Yeah.
So now what we're seeing is that storage has come a long way, not so long that you can actually get used lithium iron phosphate.
Yeah.
Lithium iron phosphate, lithium cobalts, and those variations, and lithium iron phosphate, they kind of live in a bit different worlds, and they proponents of, there's a bit of a, people kind of tend to lean in one direction or another. They have different characteristics, but one of the main characteristics of lithium iron phosphate, outside of, then you could talk about supply chain related issues, you could talk about C rating, like their ability to discharge a lot of energy at a given moment in time, power a lot of given moment in time. But longevity tends to be one of the main things when we think about lithium iron phosphate. And so you've got long cycle ratings.
Absolutely.
Your experience right now, those batteries may last you way longer than you even think.
Yeah.
And you've also been able to get them used, so you paid a fraction of their price.
Yeah.
Which is bonkers.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, fraction. They're like the... Look, I not to promote, but what's the guy's name? Will...
What, is he part of the industry?
Well, he does the YouTube videos.
Will Prowse.
Will Prowse. Yeah. DIY, do it yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
watched
watched
one of these too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched a ton of his videos, and he breaks apart every lithium ion battery, and he tests them for the cold sensor, the heat sensor. He does make sure they're packaged and one all of a sudden I stumbled on this video he had of like the cheapest way to get yourself into lithium iron phosphate.
Yep.
And it was these medical batteries they sell on eBay.
I love the fact you're so curious, dude. You're just constantly like Is that too much in a cigarette? Probably, right?
No, you're probably spread it out.
You're gonna see the worst rolled cigarette in the history of rolled cigarettes right
I
now.
can roll it for you here.
You want to do it?
One.
All right,
Take that
I'm
one.
gonna make a mess out of it. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. You got whoa.
So, here you go.
Yep.
So I'm always a little timid buying some on eBay and all that, but I ended up buying them, a couple. I said, all right, I'll try 2 and see how that works out.
Yeah.
Got them, hooked them up, everything was solid. So I said, fuck it, I'm getting 2 more. Got 2 more. 4's been fine, but I just got another 2. Just because I think having the 6 will give me even more longevity, but also capacity for more output.
That's the exciting part.
Yeah.
So
So
you can swap out that inverter and get a more powerful inverter.
I could get a 3,000 watt inverter, maybe $400 or $500, but I don't have anything that draws except that oven.
So
That oven's 1,800 watts.
This is amazing. So you're looking for load. if